Bismillah Rahman Rahim. We start with the 5090 Biology O level syllabus, and this is chapter 19, which is the last chapter. And we're going to be doing relationships of organisms and the environment, and this is going to be the 19.1, and this is the first video on this chapter. Now, as we start with chapter number 19, the first one is 19.1, which is energy flow. Understand that sun is the principal source of energy input into most biological systems. Explain why most forms of life are completely dependent on photosynthesis. Describe the flow of energy through food chains and food webs, including energy from light and energy in living organisms and its eventual transfer to the environment. Construct and interpret simple food chains. Understand the term producer, consumer, herbivore, carnivore, and decomposer. Describe food webs as networks of interconnected food chains and construct and interpret them. Explain why the transfer of energy from one trophic level to another is inefficient. Explain why food chains usually have fewer than 5 trophic levels. Explain why it is more energy efficient for humans to eat crop plants than to eat livestock that have been fed on crop plants. So why is it a good idea to have lettuce or an apple rather than having a piece of chicken or a piece of mutton or a piece of beef? And the last is construct and interpret pyramids of numbers, biomass, and energy. First of all, let's come on to, we'll deviate a little from the syllabus sequence of what is a food chain. A food chain shows the transfer of energy within an ecosystem. Okay, so energy present in this plant is going to be transferred to the caterpillar, from the caterpillar to the mouse, from the mouse to the fox, and then to the eagle, and then to the mushrooms. So energy is transferred between organisms, and one organism eats another. When the grasshopper eats the grass, when the mouse eats the grasshopper. A food chain is a simple linear series of steps, while a food web is more complex. Now, as you can see in this diagram, you can see the difference, what is a food chain and what is a food web. So this is a very simple food chain. Trees. Please do not use the word trees. You have to use a certain name. You have to say oak tree or a banana tree or a mango tree. And then you see deers and then you see lions. Then you see here flower. You better say which flower, say rose bush or an dandelions or sunflower. Then small fish, then large fish, and then birds. And flower, flies, frog, snake, eagle. But look at this one. Now this is a number of food chains which are interconnected because you have the tree, then the fly, then the bird, and then the eagle. And then you also have the fly and the frog and the snake and the eagle. Then you have the grasshopper, frog, snake, eagle. Then you have grasshopper, rat, fox, eagle. And then you have the carrots and the rabbit and then the eagle. So a food web is a large number of food chains which are interconnected. Another example of food chains, a three-linked food chain, corn, rat, owl. A four-linked food chain, carrots, rabbit, fox, lion. A five-linked food chain, grass, grasshopper, frog, python, eagle. Another very interesting food web. So now you see how a food web is different from a food chain. A food web can have many food chains. A food chain is just one single that we talk about. We just talk it of in one single line and we talk of them. So I can say, okay, grass, rabbit, fox is one food chain. Then grass, grasshopper, bird, snake, hawk is another food chain. But then we can also have grass, grasshopper, frog, python, or the snake. And the snake is taken up by the hawk. So another food chain. Then what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is using the sun to make useful forms of energy. So in photosynthesis, the light energy is converted into chemical energy. Sunlight plays a much larger role in our sustenance than we may expect. All the food we eat and all the fossil fuel we use is a product of photosynthesis, which is the process that converts energy in sunlight, light energy, to chemical forms of energy that can be used by biological systems. Photosynthesis energy producing process in autotrophs. Autotrophs are plants which can make their own food. Autotrophs are organisms that produce their own food. They are self-feeding. Example, plants, algae, and some bacteria which are photosynthetic. Making your own food requires the intake of sunlight energy. Pigments, specifically chlorophyll, found in cells of autotrophs, capture the light and use it to start the photosynthesis reaction. Chlorophyll is found in chloroplasts and is what makes the plant green. Most chlorophyll is found in leaf material, so most of the photosynthesis that takes place happens in the leaf. Life depends on photosynthesis. The evolution of photosynthesis changed planet Earth. Most organisms rely directly or indirectly on photosynthesis. First, organisms all heterotrophs. Autotrophs evolved later. Photosynthesis released oxygen gas. Aerobic organisms outcompeted the anaerobic organisms. Now, how does life depend on photosynthesis? What we have is heat energy, which is being, of course, lost to the environment, chemical energy, potential energy available for cellular tasks. So you have carbon dioxide and water combining. In the presence of sunlight, which is the kinetic energy, and heat energy is released. But oxygen is the byproduct. And sugar, which is the potential energy, which is the chemical energy in the glucose molecule, which is produced by photosynthesis. Without photosynthesis, neither the plants nor the animal in this image would survive. Photosynthesis is essential to sustaining life on Earth. Why? Because you see, this animal, this animal cannot photosynthesize, but the tree can photosynthesize. So that the tree is providing the oxygen for this animal. Also, it is providing this food, this sugar, which is food for the animal. Now let's come to trophic levels. What are trophic levels? Trophic levels are actually feeding levels. Organisms interact with members of their own species and with those of other species. Relationship between or among different organisms are known as biotic factors. Interaction of a community with its environment is an ecological system or ecosystem. Each organism represents a feeding step or trophic level in the passage of energy and materials. So you can see here that was 1000 biomass, now 100, then 10. So the trophic levels, which are always the plants, which are the first, you see 10,000. From 10,000 went to 1,000, then 100. So only 10% is transferred to the next level. Though the producer is the first trophic level, then the second trophic level, then the third. So producers first, second, secondary consumer third, and then fourth. So we have these names for it. Producers are the ones which are the autotrophs. They are the plants which can make their own food. So autotrophs will be the first, which is the producer. Then primary consumer, which are the crickets. Then the secondary consumer, which are the frogs. And the tertiary consumer is the herons. So we have these trophic levels. Now let's look at energy flow in ecosystems. The third level consumer obtains 10% of the energy of the ground modes. So we have producers had 1000 kilocalories, now is 100, now 10, and then 1 kilocalorie available. So only 10% of the energy is transferred to the next. Because you see, in plants, now in plants you don't eat the whole plant. Sometimes you only eat the leaves, like in lettuce. Sometimes you eat the stem, like in sugarcane. Sometimes you eat the root, like in carrots. So you don't eat the whole plant. But if the whole plant is taken out, probably it has 100 kilojoules of energy. But because you only eat some of it, and the cellulose and the lignin is not even digested, so you only get 10 kilojoules of energy out of it. Because number one, you don't eat the whole plant. You only eat some part of the plant. Even in a chicken, you don't eat the whole chicken. You only eat the meat. You don't eat the bones. The bones have energy. If you burn the bones, heat is going to be released. You don't eat the feathers. If the feathers are burnt, energy is going to be released. So the third level consumer only obtains 10% of the energy of the ground moles. So energy flow in ecosystems. So you can see that in all biological systems, sun is the main providing energy. So the energy input is sunlight. And then the primary consumer. Then we have, sorry, primary producer. There's no primary. Actually, you shouldn't use the word primary. Producers. Then primary consumers. Then secondary consumers. Then tertiary consumers. And you can see how the Block is changing. This is 10,000 available. So this is actually the one which is the limiting factor. And then this is reducing, and then this is reducing, and then this is reducing. First is producers, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. This is the first trophic level. This is the second trophic level. This is the third trophic level, and this is the fourth trophic level. Now this is called an autotroph. These are called herbivores, primary carnivores, and secondary carnivores. But they're just carnivore is also fine as well. So we have the plants, we have the grasshopper, the ground squirrel, then we have the scorpion, then we have the fox, and then we have the golden eagle. Now coming to energy flow in ecosystems, biomass is the total mass of all living things in a given area. Biomass, why is it going to vary? Because it's going to vary according to the seasons. If in winter there's a lot of snow, then there's going to be less grass. Less grass means less insects. So it is a very seasonal thing when you're thinking of nature. A habitat which is in severe winters, a habitat which goes through severe summers, then of course the vegetation will decrease. So biomass is the total mass of all living things in a given area. Biomass is also sometimes used to the mass of organic material used to produce biofuels such as biogas. Biomass is generally measured in gram per meter square or kilogram per meter square. Within an organism's niche, the organism interacts with the ecosystem by obtaining food from the ecosystem, contributing energy to the ecosystem. Plants are called producers because they produce carbohydrates from carbon dioxide, water, and the sun's energy. Consumers get their energy by feeding on producers or other consumers. And decomposition is the breakdown of waste and dead organisms by organisms called decomposers through the process of biodegradation. Now, coming to a pyramid of biomass. You can see a pyramid of biomass will always have a very large pyramid. It's actually a horizontal bar diagram. So here you have the mass of the oak tree. So this whole bar represents the mass of the oak tree. Whatever the number of caterpillars are, this is the total mass of the caterpillars. Maybe there are 1,000 caterpillars. Maybe there are 50 birds. So this is the total mass of the birds. And this is the total mass of one sparrowhawk. So the amount of organic matter in an ecosystem is its biomass. This pyramid shows that the total biomass an ecosystem can support decreases at each higher feeding level. This is because there is less energy available at each level. The greatest amount of biomass is found at the producer level and decreases with each higher feeding level. Now, pyramids of numbers not always as simple as we would like. When we say one oak tree, well, we just draw one line. This is one oak tree. And then we have how many insects? Maybe 1,000 of them. And then we have maybe 20 of the woodpeckers. So 20 of the woodpeckers. So here what we have? We have a pyramid of numbers. So one oak tree, 100 insects, 20 woodpeckers. So that's how you see the number. Pyramid of numbers is very funny. It doesn't look like a pyramid at all. Now if you look at pyramid of numbers, this is another one. Now clover produces many plants. So this is a larger, say we have 100 clover plants. Then we have say 80 snails living there. And then say we have 50 thrush. And then we have one sparrowhawk. So it's very variable. Pyramid of numbers would be according to the question, you'll have to figure it out. Where is that one? Is it one oak tree or is it one sparrowhawk? If it's one oak tree, then the first line would be one oak tree. And then you have something else on it. And then you have something else on it. And then you could have one sparrowhawk here again. So read the question carefully when you're doing this question. Now, this is an example of an energy pyramid. Now, energy pyramid will always be like this. It will always be triangular. Why? Because the grass has 10,000 kilocalories, 1,000, 100, 10, 1. So the energy is decreasing. Why? Because the energy transfer is very inefficient, as it says in your syllabus. So it's a very inefficient energy transfer. Though we had 10,000 kilocalories, but still there are only 1,000 in the next stage. So this is the producer, this is the primary consumer, this is the secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, and quaternary consumer. So the energy is lost. Why? Because you don't eat the whole plant, you don't eat the whole chicken, you don't eat the, you see, so that is why the energy transfer is very, very inefficient. Now, trophic levels and energy transfer. Trophic levels are split by a who eats who system. That's a very good way of saying it. Who eats who system. So we have here the producers, and they produce so many kilocalories per meter square per year. So they have taken it out in the year because in the year the seasons vary: winter, summer, spring, autumn. So heterotrophs, only about 10% of a level's absorbed energy is absorbed by the next one. Then the vast majority of energy is lost as heat to the environment. Heat is produced by cellular respiration, a necessary function for life. Decomposers live off detritus by decomposing waste and dead matter from the other trophic levels. So, trophic levels are split by a who eats who system. So, heterotrophs now have only 10 kilocalories meter square per year. So, decomposers, of course, are right at the bottom where any of these organisms will die, then they'll be decomposed by the bacteria and fungi. Now, a pyramid of numbers of the food chain: oak tree, beetle, sparrow, and hawk, and then the same pyramid of biomass of the same food chain. So, oak tree would have a lot of mass, beetle, sparrow, and the hawk. So, a pyramid of biomass of the same food chain and a pyramid of numbers of the same food chain. So, you can see how different it is because here we are talking of one oak tree. So, how that is different in this case, in which the mass of the oak tree is, of course, enormous. Now, there is some energy transfers that we need to talk about. Now, if you look at this diagram that we have here, you see this is the amount of sunlight which enters the Earth's atmosphere. Now, only 1% is used in photosynthesis. 40% warms up the soil, air, and vegetation. 39% evaporates water from plants. Because sunlight also has energy, light energy and heat energy. And 20% is reflected from the plant. So only 1% is used in photosynthesis. Now, let's look at the food eaten by plants to animals. So when a cow eats food, whatever the food is, of course it eats grass, it's a herbivore, 30% is lost as energy, lost as heat. Only 10% is used for growth. And that also depends upon the age of the animal. And 60% is not even digested, it's passed out in the feces. So you can now understand why I'm saying, and why is this a question in the syllabus, why is it better eating an apple rather than eating a piece of cow's meat or chicken meat or lamb's meat? The reason is that all the food that the animal has consumed, only 10% is used for growth. You're not going to eat the bones of the animals, you're going to eat the muscle of the animal. So 30% is lost as energy, 10% is only used for growth, and 60% of the food is not even digested. So what a waste! What a waste! But if you are eating an apple, then that apple contains whatever energy, all that is used except the cellulose and the lignin, which you cannot digest, which will be passed out in your feces. So this is the reason why we talk about this part of the syllabus in this manner. I mean, I like to teach it in this manner. And this completes 19.1, and we will continue the rest of it in another video. Thank you once again. I end with the Surah Fatiha, and I wish all of you can recite this regularly in your prayers 5 times a day. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, all praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, sovereign of the day of recompense. It is you alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those upon whom you have bestowed favor, not of those who have evoked your anger or of those who are astray. May Allah guide us all all of those watching these videos, and all our friends and families on the righteous path, and may we all be redeemed on the day of judgment. Amen.